I'm Jonathan Larson with TYT Investigates, and I want to take a minute to give people a chance to find us here because we started the live stream on another stream, and we were having technical problems there. So I'm gonna take a minute and wait for people to show up here. Once we see that I've got a few people here, then we'll get going. Sorry to make you all wait, and I hope the audio is all right. I got told based on my sound check that my audio sounded like it was from the 1940s, which I hope means it had good old common sense. I have no idea what that means. Okay. Parnell Jenkins says, nice haircut. You must have missed me last week when it was shorter. All right, let's get started. I'm Jonathan Larson with TYT Investigates, talking about a new report in Politico this morning. The headline reads, Facing Bleak November, Republicans look to stoke BLM, Black Lives Matter backlash. And the reference to the Southern strategy in the headline, most of you are probably aware of this, refers to the Republican strategy back in the 60s and 70s when they saw that they were losing. What they explicitly decided to do was to peel away white Southern Democrats by stoking racial division. In other words, getting them to identify the Democratic Party as the party of black people and get Southerners, Southern Democrats, to switch parties based on that. We've got something similar going on here. And what Politico has done, the report is by Laura Barone Lopez and Alex Thompson, and what they've done is they've looked at the pattern of advertising and rhetoric coming out of two different quarters of the Republican Party. So I want to share some of the details that they've come up with. Republicans are using two lines of attack. The Trump administration, candidates in safe red seats, and right-wing social media channels are seeking to label the entire movement, Black Lives Matter, as Marxist and anti-family as they try to energize their conservative base. So the people, again, note, it's candidates in safe red seats and right-wing social media channels and Trump. All of these are people who have nothing to lose by alienating independents, alienating the center. What they're doing is specifically labeling Black Lives Matter. They're the ones saying the phrase Black Lives Matter, calling it Marxist, calling it anti-family. Then there's the second silo here. Republicans running in swing districts and states, meanwhile, this is according to Politico, are tying their Democratic opponents to activists' demands to defund police departments while avoiding explicitly mentioning Black Lives Matter. Instead, Republicans running in competitive general election races have focused recent ads on more abstract targets like left-wing radicals and the liberal mob. They give some examples. On the same day, President Donald Trump tweeted that Black Lives Matter was a symbol of hate. His personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, declared to a group of reporters at the White House that, quote, Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization. Black Lives Matter has been planning to destroy the police for 3 years. Other Trump administration officials and Republican lawmakers, particularly those running in tough primaries, followed suit, warning in addition that the movement, Black Lives Matter, wanted to destroy the nuclear family. Fox News hosts, conservative talk radio personalities, and think tanks such as the Heritage Foundation joined in as well. Prager University's Black Lives Matter is a Marxist movement video released this month has over 1 million views on YouTube and is one of several popular videos it has produced on the topic. So let's get a quick assessment of this from the left, from the movement itself. Black Lives Matter has won mainstream support, right, across racial and partisan lines, according to Politico, according to lots of polls that we've found. There's a lot of broad-based support for Black Lives Matter on Main Street, among cops, in the suburbs. People are getting it. Politico quotes Maurice Mitchell, National Director of the Working Families Party and a leader with the Movement for Black Lives Coalition. Quote, we recognize that this is not simply an issue fight. This isn't simply a narrative war. What we think we're experiencing is a social and cultural and political realignment. He's talking here about the popularity of Black Lives Matter. He says, however, quote, we continue to give that backlash. This is the stuff coming out of the White House and Giuliani and Fox News. We continue to give that backlash the adequate concern and respect one would give any dangerous opponent, even one that is clearly on the wrong side of history. So let's talk about the substance of these two attacks, right? The idea is that the quote unquote safe Republicans, who are mostly appealing to their base, they attack Black Lives Matter as Marxist and anti-family. And then the swing district Republican candidates, they can then avoid pissing off independents. They don't have to talk about Black Lives Matter, which would piss off those independents. They just refer to the far left, which lets them use all the seeds that have been sown against specifically Black Lives Matter. So let's talk about those specific critiques. The two founders of Black Lives Matter are self-described Marxists, according to comments that they've made in the past, including Patrisse Cullors, who used that phrase in a 2015 interview. She told Politico, quote, yes, I'm trained in different economic philosophies, but, she added, quote, I refuse to be reduced to a single clip from an interview that was manipulated for white supremacist and right-wing fear-mongering. Melina Abdullah, a Pan-African Studies professor at California State University in Los Angeles and head of Black Lives Matter's LA chapter, wrote the passage on the nuclear family that is featured on the Black Lives Matter Global Network website. Abdullah explained that it is, quote, an affirmation of the African principle that it takes a village to raise a child. It's invoking the idea that all of us are responsible for our collective children. So let's unpack this a little bit. We'll start with the family. They're described as being anti-family because what they're saying is that the nuclear family is not enough, right? Mothers and fathers need help. They're not attacking the nuclear family. They're saying we all need to contribute for nuclear families to succeed. That's the message there. And another part of the message, of course, is that non-traditional families, which, by the way, have happened in the Black community because of racism, because of discrimination, because of predatory lending. A lot of the economic deprivations that white America has visited on Black America have contributed to shattered families for obvious reasons. Recognizing that there are other less traditional family units that deserve respect, that deserve support, is not an attack on the nuclear family. It's a recognition that nuclear families are not alone. So there are two things going on here, right? Nuclear families need help, and they're not the only families. That's all. That's what the substance of their position is on families, and that's construed as them attacking families. It's very similar to the idea that saying two men or two women can get married is somehow seen as an attack on a man and a woman getting married. It's nuts. All it's talking about is saying you don't get to have that thing by yourself. You don't get to deprive others of that thing. Other people get to be families. Other people get to enjoy the same benefits that your family gets. That's all. That's all. And as for Marxist, being Marxist, well, Cullors already addressed that, but the bigger point would be, so what, right? I'm pretty sure that the United States government has collaborated with Marxists in the past. Specifically, that's how we defeated Adolf Hitler, right? America has done great things hand in hand with Marxists. But the bigger point is, none of that has anything to do with what we're talking about, right? It's all distraction. It's all distraction. It's getting people to hate, suspect, or fear Black Lives Matter based on things that have nothing to do or at least are not germane to the specific policy things we're talking about. They're not out there saying we need to impose a Marxist act. Okay, maybe some of them are out there saying that. The point is, it's not like there's legislation on the table. We don't have to agree. The center doesn't have to agree with everything that every specific leader of the Black Lives Matter movement happens to think politically. That's not how any of this works, right? So how do we deal with this stuff? How do we deal with these attacks? This might make me a hypocrite, but the way we deal with these attacks is by ignoring them. Because as soon as you start doing what I just did, which is to litigate the veracity of these claims, these attacks on Black Lives Matter, you're elevating the notion that they matter, that the attacks matter. Well, is it true? Is it not true? How true is it? What makes it true? You're still contributing to the notion that there's something debatable about Black Lives Matter. So the conversation to have instead is about the actual specific policy prescriptions that are being put forward by Black Lives Matter. And that means if defund the police sounds overly political to you, then interrogate what the actual defund the police policy prescriptions are in your community, right? Same thing, we saw the same thing with Obamacare. People hated Obamacare until you said, do you like this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing? And people said, yep, 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 all down the row. Turns out those things are the ingredients of Obamacare. In a really horrific sense, this is all just marketing, right? And we have to get better at not getting sucked in by their marketing and doing our own marketing. And the way to do that is to exert discipline and focus and message focus, right? Discipline on your message focus. It's about justice for everyone. It's not about them being bad. It's not about opponents being bad. It's about pursuing the specific things that will have a material impact, a positive material impact on people's lives. All right. Let's see what you guys have to say in the chat. And I'm sorry again for bouncing around between the different feeds. For whatever reason, it would not go live. Parnell Jenkins throws us $1.99 in the super chat, gives us a big red thumbs up on a blue field. So maybe that's a bit of red and blue. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, thank you, Parnell. That's very kind of you. Tamara says, I'm saying hi while I'm on the road. Won't be texting as I will be driving in a moment. Be safe on the road. Certainly don't be texting. Thank you very much, Tamara, for weighing in. I should add, by the way, that I'm going on vacation next week. So I'm not sure when or how I'm going to weigh in during that time. I'm going camping. So I'm definitely going off the grid at some point. Our video output will definitely go down next week. I hope and implore you to continue supporting the channel. I promise I'll be back, and our videos will be back. So whatever you can do to help boost our old videos, right? Get those out there, just to keep our levels at a sustainable amount would be great. Thank you. Tempo Dan says, turn your mic levels down a bit, JL. So I don't know how to do that, Tempo Dan. I can, I guess, look into whether or not that's something that's doable on YouTube Studio or not. But as for my mic, it's just, my mic doesn't have anything that lets me do that. So I'll have to do, I'll have to investigate how to do that within the app. Sorry about that. Whoa, we just got another super chat from Feisty Fan. Kicks in $24.99 and says, have a good time. Here's some gas money. So thanks so much. I'm super appreciative, both of the sentiment and of the cash. But I want to make something really clear here. This isn't my personal channel. The money that you folks kick in does not show up in my paycheck. It's not mine in any way, shape, or form. It goes to the company, which compensates me and everyone else on the TYT team you know, pays the rent, keeps the lights on, all that kind of stuff. So I very much appreciate it, but my gas money will be coming from the larger fund rather than specific super chat stuff. I'm guessing you're being at least tongue in cheek, and I should add, but thank you anyway, Pricey Fan. And I should add, I have a Prius, so that gas money is actually going to get me a pretty far away. That's about 500 miles for our trip, Feisty Fan. So thank you very much. All right, let's see what else you guys have to say. Thanks so much for all the contributions, guys, Parnell and Feisty Fan. Imperator One says also, how are you going to label Black Lives Matter as anti-family when they're also demanding justice for killed Black families and that ICE detainees be released? Yeah, it's not exactly made up, but it relies on these bizarre stories that appeal to this notion that the exclusivity of certain concepts, if it's challenged, that's an attack on those concepts. So if you challenge the exclusivity of same-sex of heterosexual marriage, then that's somehow an attack on heterosexual marriage. If you challenge the exclusivity of the nuclear family, that's somehow an attack on the nuclear family. And in a way, it is. It's saying you're not special. It's saying you don't get to be up there alone. And that's the whole basis of the Southern strategy, right? Is that after the New Deal and the FDR era, white economic situations improved dramatically. It was the birth of the American middle class, the GI Bill, all of these things designed to create and give access, white access, to an economic ladder of upward mobility. And coupled with tax rates at the higher ends, which made much more difficult to get the Rockefellers and the Carnegies of the past at those stratospheric heights. When in the 1960s, the Voting Rights Act and especially the Civil Rights Act threatened the exclusivity of white access to that ladder, that was the foundation of the Southern strategy, right? It's the idea of having to not get to call it your own, whatever your group is, whether you're a nuclear family, whether you're a heterosexual couple, whether you're a white poor person. It's being able to say someone else gets less than I do in the way of rights, in the way of money, in the way of something, but just let there be someone else below me in some way. Imperator One says, I hope people are smart enough to see through this. I mean, I think in general, no, they're not. I mean, white people are the only group that still supports Trump, and I'm not even sure that's still true with women. But the reality is that because of the pandemic, people are able to see in really stark relief what are the extremes, the reductio ad absurdums of Trump/Republican policies and Trump/Republican governance. That, I think, more than anything, is changing the dynamic. I honestly think without the pandemic, Trump would be winning and probably would win re-election. Nikki Dearest Gogo says, what is this, the 1950s? I'm not sure if you're referring to my audio quality or not. No Middle Ground says, hey now, can Trump even do what his new executive orders proclaim? And some of them aren't even executive orders. I haven't even dived into it, but like there's memos, right? There's memos, there's executive orders. He himself kept calling them bills. Like, after 3 years, maybe get the fundamentals right of the job that you have. Tempo Dan says, too many people see black and instantly hear scary and act accordingly. Jess writes, saw Oprah Winfrey is putting her weight behind arresting Breonna Taylor's murderers. That's interesting. I hadn't seen that. Kalita says, it is Marxist, though, isn't it? So, I used to do a Bill Clinton impression for Air America Radio. I haven't done it in a while, which is why it's so rusty. But to answer your question, Kalita, and thanks for asking, it depends what the meaning of is, right? I mean, is the organization Marxist? In what sense, right? According to Politico, two of the founders have identified themselves as Marxist in some way, in some concept. It's not, the organization is not based on pursuing Marxist principles. So the bottom line answer is no, but also it's like this we have this obsession with determining whether things are something, right? Is Trump racist used to be a debate. It's not so much anymore, but it's not a helpful way of thinking about things, and it gets us focused on the wrong things. If Trump says something and we think that that's something, the thing that he said is racist, it's more helpful to interrogate why that thing is racist rather than to get into the speculative, unknowable question of whether he is racist, whatever that means. Does that mean that the part of his brain that thinks about race is bad, right? Is it 3 synapses below the level it needs to be? What does that mean in a way that helps us do anything positive? RB says broad-based support for BLM, fraud-based opposition to BLM. Fair enough. Kalita says it takes a village to raise a child. Right. This is exactly what Hillary Clinton said. I think, was it back in the aughts? I don't even remember anymore. But yeah, and that was considered controversial at the time. It doesn't even have to be, aligned with issues of race. It was controversial because Hillary Clinton said it. If a Republican had said, "Hey, we should all band together to help families," that would be considered the most anodyne thing in the world. But if you say it takes a village to help a child, if you even hint at the idea that families need help in the sense that they're incapable of doing some things on their own, which might imply there might need to be some government involvement, then you've got a very different fight on your hands. Jess writes, I don't give AF what political views a person has. The real tell about a person is in their actions. Watch what they do, not what they say. Tempo Dan, I'm seeing what you're saying, but I'm not exactly sure that I'm getting it well enough to represent it in the video, so I apologize. Maybe you'll have something further down in the chat that I can share. Ubaid Raza writes, responds to Kalita asking about Black Lives Matter Marxism, writing, Black Lives Matter is not specifically against capitalism. Many in the movement are Marxist, but the movement itself, is just against systematic racism and oppression, etc. Melanie Davis says, we should be caring for each other's children and each other. That's what it takes in this world to survive and in harmony. Kalita writes, as long as capitalism exists, racism will exist because capitalism is rooted in inequality. Diamond Onyx writes, the executive order is chaos. Don the Khan is delusional. USA needs funds for livelihoods. just as the political labeling of any organization that the people get behind is meant to divide and tear us apart. And that's the real key to division, is to get you to care about something that doesn't actually matter, but can be used to make you feel like you should be opposed to someone else in some way, right? The key is that it generally shouldn't matter. When you focus on what really should matter, like Black lives, there's broad unanimity, right? That's what this piece says. For a group that started off as controversially as it did, and I don't mean they did something wrong, I mean they were treated as if they had, to have reached a place of such broad support where corporations are lining up to, however disingenuously, proclaim Black Lives Matter, Nike, Black Lives Matter, NBA, whatever it might be, they want to be seen as supporting Black Lives Matter. It's about as good a litmus test as you could want for an idea that is broadly, uncontroversially popular. To fight that, all they can do is try to come up with something else where they can find division. Marxism, family, these ephemeral concepts that have no bearing here, right? That's their key, is to try to get you to care about something that does not matter. And the only real way to deal with something that does not matter is to ignore it. And that doesn't mean that we have to sit back and let evil happen, but there are different ways to combat evil, right? If you don't ignore it in the name of fighting back, you are also helping it, because you're endorsing the underlying point, which is that that it matters, right? It doesn't matter to them whether you agree or not, but by having the discussion, you're endorsing the concept that it matters whether they're Marxist, it matters whether they're anti-family. So you're helping them by having the discussion. That's why the headline of this piece is not, is Black Lives Matter? Is Black Lives anti-family? I'm not trying to engage in that question. I'm trying to expose what's going on here, courtesy of Politico's reporting, but also offer my thoughts on how to think about this. And if the urge is to do something good in response or to counterbalance what is bad, the way to do that is to elevate the things that actually matter. That's what they don't want you to do. That's the real thing they don't want you doing, is to elevate the things that actually matter and therefore have broad-based appeal. So instead of pushing back every time you see a toxic message, have the discipline to ignore it or use your response to elevate the thing that unites us. Okay, I've been going on for a while now, so I'm probably going to, and I think I reached the end of the chat. I probably messed up our metrics for today by having to bounce over to another stream, so I apologize if that threw anyone off. Okay, so D Scully, it looks like you're on a point that maybe I missed the beginning of, so I apologize for that. D. Scully writes, protesting and making a demand is classified as Marxist, which the right then uses as a boogeyman, but power concedes nothing without a demand. Power concedes nothing without a demand. So they need to scare folks from making demands, and they need to scare politicians away from acceding to those demands. It's a great point, D. Scully. All right, with that, I'm going to say goodbye. I'll be back tomorrow. I hope you folks will. I hope YouTube will accommodate us with a slightly better stream. And I'll see if I can, I just got air canisters, so I'll see if I can, maybe that'll help. Or, oh, right, and I promised I would check into the app, the YouTube live app, and see if I can adjust the mic levels or anything like that. In the meantime, while I take care of that, I hope you'll take care of yourselves and take care of each other.